Alright guys, so the NASCAR playoffs start this weekend with the Quaker State 400 being on this weekend. Now I've already brought you a video basically going into how you qualify for the playoffs and also who was in line to qualify for the playoffs before the Southern 500 that was on last weekend, but I haven't yet touched upon how the playoff system works, how the points work, how these drivers get whittled down from 16 all the way down to the final 4, because it's such a complicated issue. To understand how this playoff system works, you need a maths degree, you need an engineering degree. But guess what? I've got one. And I've also got Wikipedia as well, which helps. So I'm gonna walk you through how this system works, who's actually in the playoffs, and why these guys are starting on different points total. Like, what's going on here? So first of all, let's run down the 16 drivers that are in the playoffs. These are the 16 drivers that can contend for the championship. So even though, let's just say, the likes of Chris Buescher, who is in 17th overall at the moment in the standings, if he wins every race for the rest of the season, he won't win the championship, because it has to be someone who qualified for the playoffs in this opening 30 rounds of the season, I think it is, something like that. Opening 26 rounds of the season, there we go, to decide who goes through to the playoffs. So these 16 drivers are Kyle Larson, Chris Bell, Tyler Reddick, William Byron, Ryan Blaney, Denny Hamlin, Chase Elliott, Brad Keselowski, Joey Logano, Austin Cindric, Danny Suarez, Alex Bowman, Chase Briscoe, Harrison Burton, Ty Gibbs, and Martin Truex Jr. So those are the 16 drivers that you need to be keeping an eye out on during these next few rounds. But you'll notice that not all of them have the same amount of points when they're starting these playoffs. And you're probably wondering why that is. Well, this is all determined on how many victories they got in the regular season and how many stage wins on top of that as well. So for each stage win they get in the regular season, they get an additional 1 point for every one of those. And for each race win, they get 5. So let's just say you get a driver who has won 2 races and also got 2 stage wins on top of that. So a stage 1 and a stage 2 at some point during the season, they start with an additional 12 points. The standard amount of points that they have at the start of this first stage of the playoffs is 2,000. They reset this just because otherwise you might get someone further down the order having more points overtaking them, and it's like, well, they've got more points, why they're not higher? This just basically ensures that they can't be overtaken basically by anybody outside of the top 16. And the playoffs are basically divided up into 4 different stages. So there are 10 races in total to end the season, rounds 27 through to 36. We've obviously got the Quaker State 400 starting it with Atlanta, and it ends up with Phoenix at the end of the season over in Arizona, which is basically it's actually called the NASCAR Cup Series Championship race. So the first 3 rounds of the playoffs, so this weekend's race at Atlanta, Watkins Glen, and then Bristol Motor Speedway, these will help decide who goes through to the next 12, the round of 12 as it were. There's no fancy names here or anything. They got rid of those a long time ago. So basically the bottom 4 drivers in the playoffs will be eliminated from the playoffs after round 29 at Bristol Motor Speedway. Then a similar thing will happen again in the round of 12. There'll be 4 more races, the Kansas Speedway one, the Talladega one, and also the Charlotte Motor Speedway one. And the bottom 4 drivers from the playoffs, so ranked all the way from 9th down to 12th, they will be eliminated, and then it goes to round of 8. Same thing happens again, 3 more races, Las Vegas, Homestead, Martinsville, and then there is just 4. And these 4 are the only 4 that are eligible to fight for the championship at the season-ending race over in Phoenix. Now the points are reset every time as well, so you see some funky looking points numbers. So obviously I've just mentioned that they'll be on 2,000 at the moment, then they go on to 3,000, 4,000 and 5,000 for the round of 4 at the end. But on top of that as well, there is one thing that I forgot to mention. So on top of all the bonus points they currently have in the standings, you do get some additional points depending upon where you were in the standings going into the final round, after the final round of the regular season, which was the Southern 500. So the drivers that are ranked from 1st down to 10th, they get bonus points too on top of it. So the guy who was in 1st in the championship standings, which I believe was it Reddick? Yeah, it might have been Reddick who was top, but he got 15 points if that's the case. 2nd gets 10, 3rd gets 8, 4, 7, 8, just basically go in descending order like that. So there is a lot to get your head around. It is very complicated. But, you know, the winning you're in is basically over now. So now it's like, well, you need to get good results, and you only have 3 rounds to prove it each time before the cutoff happens. I mean, Kyle Larson, for example, has a 36-point lead over both Ty Gibbs and Jr. because of his performances in the regular season. So he gets that advantage, which is a big advantage. I think you get 40 points for a win in NASCAR. So he's almost got a win on them straight away with that. But that's, of course, because he's won more. So he deserved that in a sense. So that's how the playoffs work. Now that these 16 guys are in it, I hope that all makes sense, because like I said, you need a maths and engineering degree to understand this. It's how they expect the average NASCAR fan to understand all this, I do not know, but there we go. So if anybody tells you that the NASCAR point system is simple and easy to understand, they are lying. Cut them out of your life. You don't want them. You don't need them anymore, unless they're like your boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever. So, you know, maybe keep them around in that case. But for much more stock car content, do keep it tuned right here to the NASCARchronicle.com.